Welcome back to Homework Help with Miss Gore. Today we'll be talking about our Unit 6, Day 2 homework, talking about graphing our exponential equations. So the first equation that I need to graph is y equals 1/5 to the power of x. So I have a table here, so I can use my graphing calculator where I am plugging this in, and I'm making sure that when I enter in an exponent that I am using the caret button. So when I raise 1/5 to the power of x and I'm looking at my values that appear in my table, I'm looking for things that will most likely fit on my graph. So an appropriate scale of numbers here, I would use -1, 0, 1, 2, and 3. And in my calculator, I have 5, 1, 0.2, 0.04, and 0.008. So going over to my coordinate plane, I'm going to now plot those points. So -1, 5, 0, 1, 1. Now it's a little bit hard to try to graph these points down here, but we are just going to try to get them as close as we can. And since there's no restriction on our domain, we are going to then connect these points as best we can, as I can with a stylus here. And I'm going to have this extend infinitely in both directions. And I'm going to label my equation y equals 1/5 to the power of x. Question 2. Now question 2 says to graph y equals 4 to the power of x. And it says to choose an appropriate scale. So it's saying to choose an appropriate scale because when I plug my numbers into my calculator and I start looking at my table of values, well, we know that exponential equations get very big or very small very, very quickly. So when I'm looking at my table of values, again, just copying this straight off of my graphing calculator, I'm noticing that I've got 1, 4, and 2, 16. So in order for me to get a nice picture of this, I may need to change my scale from graphing by ones to maybe counting each box by twos. That will then allow me to say that this is 10, 10, 10, oh, -10, and -10. So when I go to graph 2, 16, I will be able to find a value on there. So 2, 16, this would really be at 2. So then 10, 12, 14, 16, I will have a value here. At 1 to 4, I will be right about here. Sorry, my stylus is not great. My 0 is going to be a 1. And again, since my scale is counting by twos, I'm talking about in between there. My -1, really itty bitty tiny, and my -2, even itty bitty tinier. Since there is no restriction on my graph, I will take those values, try to connect them as best I can, and have them extend to in both directions. I'll be honest, I'm not loving my line here, but we'll try better when we have a pen and pencil. Okay, the next question that I would like to talk to, let's skip. Let's talk about letter C. So it says to solve graphically. So when I'm solving graphically, what I want to do is I want to include a sketch. So I'm going to start with sketching out a coordinate plane. So there's my x, there's my y. What I'm going to do is I'm going to graph my 3 to the x as my y1 and a 50 as my y2. So when I sketch that out there, my 3 to the x starts very, very small, gets very, very big very, very quickly. And my value of 50 is a horizontal line. So I have my points crossing, and using my calculator, I find that this point is 3.56, round to the nearest hundredth, and 50.00, again, round to the nearest hundredth. So I'm going to label my lines here. So y1 equals 3 to the x, y2 equals 50. And there's my sketch and my answer. Now remember, my answer is only my x value. So for my answer, x equals 3.56 approximately. Now, one thing that also might be nice in a case like this is since I was using my graphing calculator to do this, I might want to show what my scale was. So my x min I have as -10, my x max I have as 10, my x scale I left as 1, my y min I left as -10, my y max though I had to change in order to include the 50 on my scale. So I had my y max at 60 and my y scale I left as 1. I'm including this right here to show someone that's grading it what my actual window was so that I can identify kind of what my sketch was supposed to look like. All right, have a great day. See you tomorrow.